Appeared on Tuesday, February 13th, 2001. When a person disappears without a trace, often the most critical information is hidden in their actions and words from the days before they vanished. Patricia Viola's last known whereabouts may hold the clues to what happened to her. A devoted New Jersey housewife and mother of two inexplicably vanishes in the middle of a routine school day.
Everything appeared the way it would on any other given day.
Her pocketbook with all her personal belongings was in the house, and she was gone.
At first, there seems to be no trace, but it's not long before hidden animosities come to light.
I have never seen Pat react that way. She was not herself.
And a decade-long police investigation reveals this small town is not as idyllic as it appears.
Burglars do hit homes. It does happen.
The exact words were, "I killed the old girl."
February 13th, 2001. It's a cold afternoon in Bogota, New Jersey, a quiet town just across the George Washington Bridge and seemingly a universe away from the throng of New York City.
Bogota's a small town. It's about 7/10 of a mile. We're about 2 miles outside of New York City.
40-year-old Jim Viola has left his 9-to-5 job as an engineer at Honeywell early. As he navigates traffic from Morristown to Bogota, he thinks of his wife, Pat, who's probably at home preparing dinner, as she has every day for the last 14 years of their married life together. But as he walks through the back door of his house, balancing Valentine's Day gifts in his briefcase, he's surprised to discover the burglar alarm has been activated, and Pat's not home.
I was quite shocked because when you open the back door, the first thing you hear the beeping, that the alarm is set. So I dropped everything that I had in my hand and ran over to the panel because they only give you like 20, 30 seconds before the alarm will trip. At the same time, I'm thinking, where is Pat? It was very unusual.
In this household, where routines run like clockwork, something's suddenly amiss.
If you're the type of person who's home every day at 5 o'clock, and for the last 5 years you've been at home at 5 o'clock, and somebody comes to your house at 5:05 and you're not there, they can report you missing.
Pat is the kind of woman whose entire life revolves around the stable comforts of home. Just a few weeks earlier, 42-year-old Pat Viola was beaming as she presented one of her famous homemade birthday cakes on the evening of her son Michael's 10th birthday party.
I don't remember what presents I got, but we had a big cake. Everyone came over, and it was a lot of fun.
When it comes to birthdays and holidays, she wanted to get the perfect gift for you.
At least outwardly, the Viola family has seemed picture perfect since Pat and Jim met in 1982. On the day he interviewed for his current job, Jim noticed the young woman working in the personnel department right away.
I thought she was cute. I liked her right off the bat.
Once they did start dating, it was just meant to be. It was a love story.
The romance blossomed, and Pat and Jim got married in 1986.
The day of Pat's wedding, she was radiant. Her eyes were like jewels.
The Violas quickly have 2 children, a girl and a boy.
Yeah, we just living the dream, I guess you could say.
Pat and Jim assume life will always be this sweet. On the morning of February 13th, 2001, the day before Valentine's Day, life in the Viola household is chugging along on its usual schedule. There's not a single hint of the upheaval that will ensue later that afternoon.
February 13th was an everyday for the Viola family. They were up early, they had to get 2 kids ready for school, and Jim had to go off to work.
I remember seeing Pat that morning. She seemed to be a little bit down, maybe. She wished me luck a couple times. She just sounded a little sad.
But to Jim, Pat's mood isn't extreme enough to make him worry. Plus, he's focused on a big presentation he has to give at work that day. And he's out the door by 6:30 a.m. 13-year-old Christine and 10-year-old Michael are packed and ready to leave for school by 8:15. Then, Pat prepares to leave herself. Just before 8:30, she bundles up, leaves her house on Chestnut Avenue, and makes her way along the 2 short blocks to her son's elementary school.
Pat had to get ready herself to go in to be the volunteer school librarian at the children's school.
Pat has been working at the library for over 2 years and relishes the opportunity to be around her children during the day.
The library was just like any other day at the library. She went, she did exactly what she was supposed to do.
But while Pat is going about her regular activities, shelving books and processing checkouts, something unusual happens back at home.
Well, at some point during the morning, the house alarm went off. They do have a house alarm, and it went off.
The alarm company follows protocol. They try Pat at the house, Jim at his office, and then Pat's mother, who lives nearby. Pat's mother leaves a worried message for her daughter at home. The alarm company call is also routed through to the Bogota police station.
Our officers responded like we do on every other house alarm. They checked, they looked for the windows, they checked the doors. The officers went, they checked all the areas, nothing appeared to be damaged or bothered, and they pulled back in service.
Meanwhile, Pat continues working, unaware of the alarm. She has a cell phone, but she rarely uses it, so no one tries to call her at the library. At about 11:40 a.m., a mailman waves to Pat as she walks home. Inside the house, she hears the message from her mother about the alarm and calls her back to reassure her that everything seems fine.
The phone call to her mother was the last time that we could actually document someone had spoken to Pat.
About an hour later, Pat does one last traceable task. According to a report from the security company, she performs a reset on the house alarm at 1:11 p.m.
All alarms have codes, and only certain people would know those codes, so it's not like you could just walk into somebody's house and guess a code and punch it in correctly. If you punch it in wrong, the alarm will go off again.
Because of the tripped alarm that morning, Pat would have needed to reset the system in order to use it again.
This does prove that she's in the house at 1:11 p.m. But after that, we really don't know what happened.
When Jim Viola walks in the door and realizes his wife Pat is gone, there's an eerie quiet. As Jim surveys the house, the scene begins to look even more bizarre. Pat's coat is gone, but her purse is sitting on the counter. When Jim searches the bag, he's baffled by what she left behind.
Her pocketbook with all her personal belongings, her cell phone, ID, and her keys was in the house, and she was gone.
Also on the counter is a single key. It's the key the family uses to bolt the back door, and until now, it's always been lodged in the door's deadbolt. Pat has also failed to take something crucial with her, medication that she must take twice a day.
You're telling yourself this can't be happening. She has to be around somewhere.
Coming up, the Viola family is astounded to discover an unknown side of Pat.
I remember Pat walking in the door here. She was not herself.
Jim Viola has just returned home from work at 4:30 on a bitter cold February day. The house looks to be in its usual pristine order, but his wife of 14 years, Pat, is missing.
There does not appear to be any signs of foul play, nothing knocked over, nothing banged around, nothing broken, nothing turned upside down. Everything appeared the way it would on any other given day.
Except for one thing. Pat's purse with all her personal belongings is still in the house, including medication she takes twice a day for epilepsy. Pat Viola had been diagnosed with epilepsy at the age of 12. By 2001, she'd been living with the disease for 30 years, and she knew how to handle it.
But every once in a while, maybe once or twice a year, she would take a seizure.
Pat keeps her condition under control by being vigilant about taking her medication regularly. It's now almost 5. Her next dose is due in a few hours, and if she misses it, she'll be at risk for a seizure. Jim goes to pick up the kids who have been playing at friends' houses. But when he returns, 45 minutes later, Pat's still not home.
I didn't panic just yet. It's possible that she had gone out to the local store, shopping for Valentine's Day gifts, or maybe even taking a bus to the mall.
Jim pulls out the local bus schedule. He knows she didn't drive anywhere because a few months earlier, her driver's license had been taken from her. In November of 2000, a disturbing event occurred in the Viola house, and it had a powerful ripple effect on the winter that followed.
Michael and I were at a hockey game. My sister was here with Pat, and Pat took a major grand mal seizure. The ambulance was called, and she landed in the hospital. She recovered, but it was a pretty bad seizure.
The seizure was so severe that her doctor recommended her driver's license be suspended for 3 months.
When Pat lost her driving privilege, it was a major downer for her.
Throughout the Christmas holidays, Pat can't drive herself to the mall and enjoy the simple pleasure of buying presents for her kids. She knew she could ask a friend to drive her, but she hated to rely on someone else to do something she felt she should have been able to do herself.
She didn't like her independence taken away from her. It frightened her.
But in January, after 2 months with no more seizures, Pat holds out hope that her license will be restored at her next doctor's visit. One week before Pat Viola vanishes, she goes for a follow-up appointment with the doctor, where she receives disappointing news.
They took another blood test. The doctor said, the blood test looks pretty good, but we'd like you to go another 3 months without driving. That's like a shot to the stomach.
She was so active with the kids, taking them to sports, taking them to scouts. Part of her ability to take care of them and do things for them was stripped, which could definitely play with someone's psyche.
But the suspended license isn't the only stress in Pat's life that winter.
Several family crises were occurring, one right after the other. Jim's mom took ill, and it was extremely difficult raising 2 children, going back and forth to the hospital, and maintaining regular household chores.
Adding more tension to the mix, Jim's sister Donna recently moved in with the family after a rough breakup with her boyfriend.
It was actually Pat that mentioned to Donna, if you want to stay with us until you're on your feet, no problem.
But as the winter wears on, it becomes tiresome for Pat to take care of yet another person.
Donna smoked, and she used to smoke in the house. After Donna would leave to go off to work, Pat would go downstairs and vacuum up and make it smell real nice again. And I guess this was a nuisance.
On February 12, 2001, Pat is cleaning up Donna's bedroom and spots something maddening. Cigarette burn marks on the guest bedspread.
Pat was very worried about this. Well, you don't want to have the house burned down.
Pat agrees to talk to Donna about the burns the next morning, as there is no time to discuss the issue that night. The whole family is expected in Brooklyn, at a party thrown by good family friend, Toinette Fazio Markowitz. Pat and Toinette had been the best of friends from just about the moment they met, on a double date with their husbands.
They were very tight. I guess you could say they loved each other like sisters.
When you find somebody that's a friend to you 24 hours a day, no matter what, that to me is a sister. And that's what it's all about.
On February 12th, at her home in Brooklyn, Toinette receives a disturbing sign that something is very wrong with her best friend.
I remember Pat walking in the door here. She looked so pretty. Makeup was perfection, but she was not herself.
Upon entering the party, Pat tells Toinette she needs to speak to her urgently in another room. Away from all the party guests, Pat begins crying and says something is wrong, but it's too complex to go into now.
She asked me please not to go away on vacation for President's Week with the plans that I had. She asked me instead if she and I could go so we could talk, that she needed to take care of something.
Toinette's shocked, but she promises to plan a getaway with Pat, anywhere she wants to go. Then, Pat says something that sends Toinette reeling. She asks her to please look after the kids, no matter what happens.
At that time, I pried into her, and she just said to me, I can't discuss it now. But it's important enough that I need you to be there to listen to me. And I could tell by her voice that it was important.
Shaken, Toinette cancels her vacation that very night. Thrown by the cryptic conversation, she calls Pat early the next morning to follow up. She's surprised to hear Pat brush off their talk from the night before and change the subject to Valentine's Day presents.
She sounded tired on the phone and a little bit like hectic. But besides for that, okay.
But when she gets off the phone, Pat displays a side of herself that no one has ever seen before. Pat storms downstairs and confronts Donna about smoking in the house.
Pat came down the steps and she seemed to be very angry and yelling at Donna. And Donna was very shocked and bordering on tears because this was not Pat. It was out of character. I don't think I've ever seen her raise her voice at all, to anybody.
Donna described her like a raving maniac. I have never seen Pat react that way.
Were cigarette burns really enough to cause such an outburst? And what was it that she so desperately needed to tell her best friend? Coming up, the police embark on an urgent hunt for any trace of Pat.
If the person is in some type of distress, all those minutes and hours.
It's February 13th, 2001. Mother of two, Pat Viola, normally a creature of habit, has been missing for several hours. Nights descended on her home in Bogota, New Jersey, and her husband Jim is growing alarmed.
As the night goes along and you don't get any answers, and obviously, you're getting extremely worried.
Jim has called every friend and relative he could think of in search of Pat. And now he's facing heartbreaking questions from his two kids.
Around 11 o'clock, I turned to my dad before I went to bed, and I asked him, where's Mom? Where's she sleeping tonight? Is she okay? And he really didn't have an answer. And that was very upsetting.
That night was certainly a rough night. When you got to put your kids to bed and then their mom isn't home, it was a tough one.
At 11:58 p.m., Jim Viola calls the Bogota police and reports his wife missing. Two officers come out that night and take an official missing persons report. The next morning, the report lands on the desk of Captain James Sepp. Captain Sepp starts by examining the known factors. Pat was home at 1:11 p.m.
We can confirm she was in the house because the alarm was reset. 4:30 p.m. is when Jim Viola comes home, and she wasn't home.
So Sepp is faced with a question. How did Pat leave the house between 1:11 and 4:30 p.m. if she didn't drive?
We actually stopped all the buses in the area. We talked to the bus drivers. We spoke to the people that got on the bus just to see if any of them recognized her.
The police then checked the call logs of every taxi company in town.
This area, you're not allowed to drive a cab and just pick people up off the street. There's no hailing cabs in this area, so it wouldn't be like a random cab just came by and she hailed it and jumped into the cab.
They go door to door, asking neighbors if anyone saw Pat Viola leave the house on foot.
We also called down to the Port Authority police, and we asked them to check logs to see if anybody with her name got into a plane. All the efforts turned nothing.
Within hours, the police investigation shifts focus from how Pat left the house to where she could be now.
As time goes by, as we start putting the hours behind us, we definitely try to ramp up our efforts, because if the person is in some type of distress, the harder we look and the faster we look, the better off we are.
The sheriff's department offers a police dog to search the railroad tracks and along the banks of the local river.
Because we might actually find somebody laying on the side of a road in a ditch, and if they're clinging to life, all those minutes and hours really count. We have to make sure that we look under every stone.
The search for Pat Viola has been ongoing locally for 3 grueling days. And now, the police need to branch out.
After a certain point in time, we have to start broadening our investigation. And anytime that you broaden your investigation, you're going to have to look in places where you might not ordinarily want to look at.
The Bogota police organize an aerial search to cover more ground.
We had a helicopter up in the air, and they had a special device that checks for heat. It scans the area, and if there's a body laying somewhere in brush, it'll see that there's heat in the middle of an area.
After the aerial search reveals nothing, Captain Sepp examines clues regarding Pat's mental state at the time of her disappearance. When he hears about the argument with Donna and the conversation with Toinette, he considers a grim possibility.
We did take a look at the suicide angle, and we found information that very well may fit into the pattern of someone who'd commit suicide.
The George Washington Bridge, which spans the Hudson River, is just a few miles away. The bridge has a notorious reputation for attracting people who are suicidal, but Sepp quickly rules it out.
No one in that time frame had jumped off the bridge. And if someone did jump off the bridge, they would have recovered the body from the river, and that didn't happen. However, if you go a little bit further north on the Palisade Interstate Parkway, there's an area commonly called the Cliffs. What you see is what appears to be a nice sheer rock-faced wall.
The rock wall is choked with undergrowth, and it often takes years to recover the bodies of those who've jumped there.
There's trees, there's a forest down there, and the trees actually kind of grow backwards in towards the land.
But this potential suicide location doesn't add up either. Although these cliffs are just 5 miles from her home, Pat had no way to get there. She didn't drive, and the police investigation shows she never called for a cab. What's more, everyone who knows how devoted Pat is to her family says the notion that she would commit suicide is preposterous.
There's only one answer to the question. You know the feeling when you give birth to your child and you hold the baby for the first time? She was always there for the children. She's not the type of person to walk away. It's just impossible for her to do such a horrible thing.
Meanwhile, back on Chestnut Avenue, Pat's kids have no choice but to continue with their daily lives.
I went to school. I couldn't really concentrate in school because that's what I was thinking about, like where she was and where she was sleeping.
The first week that my mom disappeared, it was like a nightmare. Your worst dream is your mom, and she's not here, and I'm only 10 years old. And it was just hard to comprehend and understand what happened.
Desperate for any lead, Captain Sepp begins to examine the case for signs of foul play.
With missing person cases, we always want to talk to the person who reported them missing. If there's somebody that has their system and their patterns down, they would also know how to hide or disguise things so that we wouldn't find them out. So we had to speak to Jim Viola.
The police call Pat's husband Jim into the station. Investigators are intrigued to discover that records at Jim's office show he took the afternoon of February 13th off from work. Why? Where was he?
If we think that you have information that you're hiding from us, there's only one way to get it from you, and that's to go at you 110%. We had to actually nail down his whereabouts and all his actions surrounding those dates and times.
I took off the afternoon from work and went shopping for Valentine's Day gifts because that was the next day. And your wife goes missing in the afternoon that you decide to take off from work. they question that, of course.
Unfortunately, we have to question everything.
It was a tough interview. They have their methods of talking to you.
And I'm bringing their emotions up, I'm bringing their emotions down, and I'm just trying to find a kink in the armor, if there is one. And after speaking with him and having other detectives come in and interview him and give him a polygraph, there were no kinks in the armor. We checked every angle. Anything that he told us, we proved or disproved.
The police put any doubts about Jim Viola's story to rest. But they're still stymied as to what happened to Pat. 2 weeks pass, and the case seems hopelessly stalled. So Jim Viola and Toinette Markowitz decide to take matters into their own hands. Coming up, Jim and Toinette track down a lead suggesting Pat could be nearby and in distress.
And the girl amazingly remembered that Pat was there, and she saw her.
Housewife Pat Viola has been missing for 2 weeks. She's left almost no trace, and police have no leads. Her husband Jim and her best friend Toinette are reeling. It seems incomprehensible that Pat is gone, and that trying to find her is now their new daily reality. They start to formulate their own theory. When Pat and Toinette last spoke, Pat brought up Valentine's Day gifts, and that she was looking for something specific.
When she came into Brooklyn for the party, I had the singing monkey. I just wanted like a gag thing to give to my husband. And she loved it, so she wanted one for Jimmy.
And I heard from her friend Toinette that she was in the market for this singing monkey, so I'm thinking she could have gone out shopping for this item.
Jim and Toinette start to wonder if Pat could have suffered a violent seizure while shopping. What if she fell and hit her head, inducing memory loss? Stress can trigger an epileptic fit, and Pat certainly seemed stressed the day before she went missing. Perhaps she's an amnesiac at a hospital somewhere, uncertain of who she is or how to get home.
Since I was extremely upset with the situation, I decided that I had to do what would give me the right to sleep at night when I put my head on the pillow. So I went on foot to find the store that was selling this singing monkey.
In the gift aisle, Toinette finds the exact monkey Pat had been searching for. Then she shows a photo of Pat to the first clerk she sees.
And the girl amazingly remembered that Pat was there, and she saw her.
The clerk doesn't know where Pat went next, but it's the first piece of new information Toinette's heard in weeks, so she's thrilled.
I almost hugged the person in the store when she said to me, "I saw that lady, she was here."
Toinette feels she is closer than ever to finding her best friend. She calls Jim with the news. Jim is standing by to investigate what he believes happened after Pat left the store where the clerk saw her. He takes photos and video of Pat to every single local hospital.
I was very hopeful that the search of the area hospitals might find her, because I really thought that was a good theory.
But to his great disappointment, no one remembers seeing Pat. Captain Sepp is less surprised. He believes if the amnesia theory was valid, Pat would have turned up quickly.
Medical centers are all about the bottom line. If they have a patient that has no information and is lost and they have no one to turn them over to, they're going to notify the local police. The local police will then enter the person that they find into the NCIC system. And it would come up with a hit. We would get a match.
Both the police and the Violas are running out of theories to test. It's mid-March. 1 month has now passed since Pat Viola vanished from her home in New Jersey. The investigation has started to falter, and the police need help.
After the search, we turned to the media. We put out press releases. We called newspaper people in. We called television crews in. Anybody that would come listen to our story, we put it out there, and we threw it out there every day. We put it out as many times as possible.
After each new broadcast, Captain Sepp and Jim Viola wait for a miracle. And then, when they least expect it, one seems to appear. A man is driving through the Poconos mountain town of East Stroudsburg, Pennsylvania.
We had an article in the Pocono Record with Pat's photo in it. A gentleman in East Stroudsburg who had just read the newspaper article about Pat and seen her picture, was driving his car, stopped at a light, and looking across on the side street, he thought he saw Pat.
The town is 70 miles west of Pagoda. But when Jim Viola hears about the tip, he's intrigued. He knows Pat is very familiar with the area.
Jim and Pat had a timeshare that they used out in Stroudsburg, just over the border into Pennsylvania from New Jersey. And it was a place that they went to get away.
Certainly the idea that maybe Pat wanted to get away for a couple days crossed through my mind.
Perhaps the argument with Donna pushed her over the edge, and Pat somehow found her way to the mountain house. Could something have happened to her in the Poconos, which left her unable to get back to her family?
As soon as I found out, I immediately took off from work, went down to the area, and spent the whole day there.
Jim went and posted missing flyers and posters all throughout the area.
I was all over it. We got TV coverage in the area, and it sounded promising.
Jim can't help but be hopeful as he talks to every cafe and diner employee he sees. But the tip that seemed so promising yields little concrete information.
Somebody did call, and they thought that maybe they had seen her, but the information turned out to be useless to us.
Throughout the next several months, leads come pouring in every time Pat's story airs on television.
Whenever you get a tip, it really lifts up your spirits, and you are all over it.
Over the next year, Jim and his family live through the emotional ups and downs of dozens of sightings and tips.
Your adrenaline just comes right in and doesn't stop flowing until you hear, "No, I'm sorry, it wasn't her."
Coming up, a horrifying call sends police scrambling in pursuit of a murderer.
The exact words were, "I killed the old girl."
Captain James Sepp has been tirelessly working to find Pat Viola for over a year. Well over a year into the case, he received a startling phone call.
I was working one night in the Detective Bureau, and my phone rang. And a gentleman on the other end just came right out and said, "I killed Pat Viola." His exact words were, "I killed the old girl." It really piqued my interest, although the person did say one thing that was very odd. "I have her driver's license." Well, she didn't have her driver's license.
The comment makes Captain Sepp wary. He knows Pat's license had been suspended 3 months before she went missing. But he still can't ignore this call.
It's very possible maybe she left with an old driver's license. I couldn't be absolutely positive, so I kept the person on the phone as long as I could, and the entire conversation was recorded. I called the Bergen County Prosecutor's Office, and I asked them to put a trace on the phone call that came into headquarters, and they were able to trace back the records to an address in Florida.
The connection seems tenuous, but if the police can track down this man, they may just find out what happened to Pat Viola. The man on the phone says he is getting on a bus that's heading up the East Coast toward Massachusetts. Then, he offers the name of a woman who will be traveling with him. New York and New Jersey area police mobilize a unit in North Carolina to stop the bus on the highway. But once on board, they find no one that could possibly be the caller. But they do find the woman he mentioned, and she knows exactly what's going on.
She confirmed for us that it was her ex-boyfriend, and her ex-boyfriend was harassing her because she left him for another man who was going up to his place in Massachusetts.
The entire episode is a bizarre ruse.
Basically, it was a way for him to try to get back at his ex-girlfriend for leaving him. He thought it was a great way to harass her. Turned out it really wasn't.
And as work on the Pat Viola case continues, it becomes harder to bring in new and accurate information, even when tipsters mean well.
After a while, people have heard it all. They've read it. And then their memories start becoming what they read and what they saw on TV as opposed to what their actual memory is.
The case goes cold for several more years. 10 years after Patricia Viola vanishes, a private investigator named Gary Miko is in his home office in New Jersey.
I came onto this case by reading an article online about the plight of the missing and the unidentified in our country, and it was appalled. I didn't know what I could do. I thought maybe I could help someone. I began by searching missing persons in New Jersey and stumbled across the Patricia Viola website.
Miko is touched by how much time and effort has been poured into creating the website. He calls Jim Viola to volunteer his services.
First thing I needed to do was just get an overview of the case. I drove up here to view the neighborhood, to see it, to feel it, to be here 11:40 a.m., the same time that she went missing. I wanted to see what she saw. I wanted to walk where she walked.
Miko tracks down the mailman whose route ran through Pat's neighborhood years before, on the day Pat went missing. He remembers seeing her walking home that day. And then the mailman says something strange.
The mailman says, I can't believe there's not a connection between what happened in 1997 across the street from the Viola residence and Patricia's disappearance.
Investigator Miko's surprised to learn that another dark event occurred on Chestnut Avenue.
October 23rd, 1997, there was a triple homicide in a house across the street from where Jim Viola and his wife Pat lived. It was a robbery that turned bad, and the home invasion turned out to be the scene of a triple homicide.
The neighbor was a diamond dealer, and gems were at the heart of the robbery. The murderers were quickly caught, thanks to a neighborhood tipster who spotted a suspicious-looking man waiting in a car.
That guy turned out to be the getaway driver for the men who were actually inside the house killing the people at the time.
At first, the hideous crime doesn't seem to have any connection to Pat's disappearance.
Well, you hear that, but that's 1997 is a triple murder. This is not 2001. How could 1997 overlap into 2001?
Then, Gary Miko stumbles across a tantalizing fact. He learns that the murder trials were going on in late 2000 and early 2001. And during that time, there was a nefarious turn of events. One of the murderers, faced with the prospect of a life sentence, decides to do away with some witnesses.
One of the individuals, I guess he spoke to people at the jail and he was looking to hire a hitman. He thought that if people weren't around to testify against him, it would make his case a lot easier. Fortunately for us, someone in the jail turned this information over to the sheriff's department, and we were able to get an undercover detective from the Bergen County Prosecutor's Office in to pose as a hitman.
Thanks to the planted hitman, the county prosecutor is able to foil the plot. Still, several people in the neighborhood wonder if through some connection to this case, harm may have come to Pat Viola. Could the murderers on trial have assumed Pat Viola was the watchful neighbor that turned them in? The Bogota police aren't convinced.
Pat Viola was never part of that investigation. She wasn't a witness, she wasn't spoken to, she didn't come forward with anything. The only coincidence between the triple homicides and Pat Viola was the fact that she lives on the block.
Still, many find it hard to believe that two incredible events on the same quiet block of a small town are unrelated. Perhaps there was more to the tripped alarm the morning Pat disappeared than anyone realized.
Burglars do hit homes twice. They do hit the same homes twice. It does happen. And with the amount of press, and there was a lot of it at the time in 2001 on the trial, maybe some bad guys were reading the paper again. Maybe they said, well, you know what, they're still living in the home. They're still involved in diamonds, and maybe we need to hit it.
When they showed the story on the news, I started screaming. I had to literally get up and walk away from the television.
He was the brother I didn't have but always wanted, and I didn't have him for long enough.
It's very rare, obviously, to get surveillance footage of an actual murder.
They don't get any money. They didn't gain anything out of what they did. It was just senseless.
The trail became cold, and we were desperate for a lead.
Investigators wanted to dust the counter for prints, but everybody that comes in there could touch that counter.
The culprits are either going to mess up, or somebody gets in trouble and wants a deal to help.
Coolers. He would count the safe down and make sure the drawers were whatever their drawers were supposed to be. When Will did anything, he always did it wholeheartedly. He was a little bit of a workaholic. He never complained about the store, and he never complained about going into work. It's like the store became a friend to him. My mom and my dad were managers, and they ended up training Will. The only thing I can ever remember is Will at the Kangaroo. He worked at the Kangaroo literally his whole adult life.
When Willard isn't working, he enjoys spending time with his close-knit family.
There's about a 16-year age difference. He was just out of high school when I was turning 3. So I remember doing the little sister bugging him thing. Will and I lived with my parents and my aunt, Will's mom. Will's mother is one of the sweetest women ever. She practically raised me. I called her Mama Sue for the longest time. She's still my Mama Sue at heart.
At a young age, Sue began overcoming adversity when she was diagnosed with a severe hearing disability.
From the time I was a very young girl, I always felt isolated because of the fact that I couldn't hear. So I taught myself how to read. Disability was not well known until I turned 18.
In April of 1980, Sue's world gets a new addition when she welcomes her first child, Willard.
He was born at 11:57 a.m. on April 6th, which was Easter Sunday, 1980. We were close-knit. He was funny. He was always the child that anytime I said no, he couldn't do this, couldn't do that, they went ahead and did it anyway.
He was a very sweet, very friendly, mostly introverted person. He liked just the little geeky things. The video games. He did read the Harry Potter books as they came out. He was a huge nerd.
In 1996, at the age of 16, Willard and his family moved to South Carolina.
I am Robert Cribb. I got to know Willard Grandstaff at high school in the spring of 1996. I was coming out of my class one day, and I saw this boy standing there, and I said, I'm going over and speak to him. He looks like something's bugging him. So I walked up to him, and he said, Hi, I'm Willard Grandstaff. Can I have lunch with you? That's how we became good friends, and we became inseparable.
As the friendship evolves, Robert comes to Willard's defense.
Just before the bell rang for us to go into the class, me and Will were standing there talking, and a bully just come up to him and just shove him. Well, I went to the nearest assistant principal, and I told him, I said, he needs to stop.
The bullying continues, so Willard finds solace in his favorite pastime.
He loved martial arts. Him and I would get together, and he would show me different martial arts moves that he knew. Him and I would study our martial arts.
He'd have gone toe-to-toe with anybody that threatened us. He was very protective, so if you mattered to him, he would definitely protect you at all costs.
During his senior year, Willard begins working at the Kangaroo Express.
He took pride in the store. He made a lot of friends. He knew a lot of the customers that came in during the 11 to 7 shift. He took pride in knowing some of the customers by name.
Oh, he loved it. I would go in there and help him stack the totes up outside, and then we'd sit in a chair and carry on conversation all night long.
While working at the gas station, Willard dreams about what the future holds.
He was waiting for the winter session of the community college to start. He was going to sign up.
When he got paid, he would put money aside to save his tuition. He wanted to go to Millennium Tech and become a computer engineer. Will had plans to better himself.
One evening in late September, Willard prepares for his standard overnight shift at the Kangaroo Express.
I took him to work that night. Will never did like to drive. I didn't mind driving him to work. I guess that's a happy memory that I can hang on to.
Sue drops off her son, unaware that this is the last time she will see him alive.
I'm Investigator Brian Metz from the Richland County Sheriff's Office. Just after midnight, the morning of September the 28th, 2004, two ladies had stopped to get gas at the Kangaroo station on Garners Ferry Road. And they found the clerk on the floor. With blood up around his head.
Critical clues buried in Willard's final moments.
The accomplice was laying in wait. They knew he was somewhere.
An inside tip suggests a surprising motive.
To go take that next step into murder is unusual.
It's starting to look like there was some type of beef or argument with Willard.
And an unlikely witness unlocks the crime.
In this particular case, he was at one tip that possibly changes everything.
On September 27th, 2004, while 24-year-old Willard Grandstaff prepared for work, he spoke to his best friend in one of his final moments.
I told him, I said, Will, you don't need to go to work. I got a funny feeling something's going to happen. I don't like Will to be out working after dark because I don't trust people out there. He said, Robert, I have to go to work. There's nobody that can work my shift for me. But Willard didn't not have a lazy bone in his body. Well, I couldn't talk him out of it, and he went to work. He said, I'll call you at 12:30 a.m. to let you know that I made it to work safe. Well, 12 midnight come, 12:30 came. I'm laying in the bed waiting for the call. My phone never rings.
While Cribb waited to hear from Willard, Richland County Sheriff's officers responded to the 911 call from the Kangaroo Express.
I'm J. Stan Smith, Deputy Chief of the Richland County Sheriff's Department's Criminal Investigative Division. The individuals were obviously in a state of shock, what they had seen when they arrived at the store. But they immediately called 911, and we had EMS summoned to the scene, looking for signs of life. But the individual had passed away. Crime scene investigators became involved at that point.
The sergeant on duty briefed myself and spoke to the two people who had reported it. After that, we began the investigation. So when we go inside, we see the clerk on the floor in front of the counter and blood around his head and what appeared to be a gunshot wound to his head. A wound like that looks like it's pretty close up. You know, we're talking point blank. There could be a lot of explanations for that. Maybe somebody was mad at him. Did somebody have a big beef with him or hatred for him?
The victim had identification on him, and we were able to make contact with the management of the store relatively quickly. So we confirmed his identity through management.
We were able to identify that the clerk was Willard Grandstaff. Willard's uncle was manager at the store, and he assisted us while we were there. It's never good to have a person as young as Willard die. It's never easy on a family when something like this happens.
I busted out crying and screaming and yelling and hitting everybody that came anywhere near me because I didn't want to believe it.
I went into a severe, deep depression. I didn't want to do anything, and all I wanted to do was be with him.
I was 6 when Will died. He was my absolute best friend. I don't know if I truly had a concept of death that time, but I knew he wasn't coming home.
To piece together what happened to Willard, investigators and crime scene technicians process the scene.
Some of the display racks in front of the counter had been knocked over. Appeared to have been some type of struggle. The crime scene unit informed us that they had found a .380 caliber shell casing.
The shell casing, that's very significant in any investigation because, first of all, it tells you what gun you're looking for, and then ultimately, if you recovered a weapon, you could match it ballistically to the shell casing.
After bagging the casing, investigators spot something in the storeroom.
It's very rare to get surveillance footage of an actual murder. A convenience store would be a good opportunity where you do have surveillance video to show thefts and things of that nature. In this particular instance, there was video, and so the efforts were made to collect and secure the surveillance video, hoping that it would shed light on the identities of the perpetrators.
We could see that Willard was doing cleanup in the store and then had gone to the back of the store to stock the coolers. He was busy doing his job. Shortly before midnight, 2 males come in, larger male and a smaller male. Both of them are dressed in darker clothes. Their faces are covered. Both of them are carrying handguns. The larger male is an African-American male. The other one was hard to tell, not enough skin showing. He could have been a light-skinned African-American. He could have been white.
The 2 suspects separated in the store. The accomplice was over behind a rack. They obviously did not see Willard when they first came in. They knew he was somewhere, and they figured he would emerge.
So the lighter-skinned male goes behind the counter to the cash register, and then there was like a back office. He looked like he was looking probably for the clerk. The heavier-set male stands in front of the counter, I guess more like a lookout.
Police continue watching as the masked gunmen move through the store before Willard suddenly emerges.
Willard seemed to be pretty calm. The heavy-set male started demanding money from him and telling him to put his hands on the counter. So Willard refuses to do what he says and gets struck by the heavier-set male. The other male then comes from behind the counter, jumps over the counter, and basically falls, knocking over some things. And then Willard is able to get back to his feet.
They are sort of incredulous as to his refusal.
No! No! You heard me, no!
And that's when the shooter takes a look out the front door. And shoots Willard in the head. The 2 immediately turned to the door and walked out. They didn't run out, they walked out. It was sort of an impulse reaction, sort of like, I'm going to show you type thing is the impression I got from looking at the video. Willard was very brave to do what he did. You don't know the mindset of the person holding the gun. They're desperate. They're unpredictable. Willard was a true innocent victim. He was minding his own business. He had a job. He was trying to contribute to society. He didn't deserve to have this happen to him.
While rewatching Willard's final moments, Metz catches a glimpse of something of interest through the store window.
Shortly after they leave, you can see an older model pickup ride through the front parking lot right past the front door. We thought that might not be coincidence.
When reviewing surveillance footage of Willard Grandstaff's murder, investigators spot a truck leaving the scene. Could this vehicle be the key to identifying the killers?
It was believed it could be the suspect vehicle because of the short time between it circling through and the two suspects entering the store. So in the absence of other information, we had to believe that that truck was in play.
It's almost too good to be true that it's a coincidence that they just happened to ride through at that point.
As detectives collect information on the pickup truck, they notice something intriguing at the beginning of the encounter.
I am Rita Schuler, retired special agent with the South Carolina Law Enforcement Division. Another very important thing that the investigators saw was when the slender guy jumped over the counter, he jumped and his palm touched the counter. And they figured, oh, we may be able to dust the counter and get a palm print that we could possibly lead back to him.
And we processed the counter area very deliberately in hopes that would produce a latent print or DNA that would help solve this case.
While awaiting results from forensics, something about this crime isn't sitting right with investigator Metz.
The one thing that got me was just the callousness of the way he was shot was totally uncalled for. There was no reason behind this.
After they shoot Willard, they leave the store. They don't get any money. They didn't gain anything out of what they did. It was just senseless.
The close-range nature of the shooting leads Metz to reconsider an earlier theory from the crime scene.
When you're looking at a case like this, you have to look at if there was anybody that had some type of beef or argument with Willard.
An individual may come in and try to steal a 12-pack of beer, but to go take that next step and to murder the clerk is unusual.
Investigators question Willard's co-workers and find out a surprising piece of information.
When we looked at possible suspects, we learned from management that Willard had thwarted a previous attempt to steal money out of the register. In this particular instance, he was successful in defending the store at that point in time. We found that video and we worked on that to see maybe that individual came back and wanted to retaliate.
Investigators compare the features of Willard's assailants to the footage of the prior robbery attempt.
We take a close look at him, look at his height, his weight, but his physical characteristics didn't match.
Despite the dead end, investigators believe that the close encounter provides insight into Willard's mindset the night he was murdered.
It told us a lot about Willard as a person. He was proud of his job and may have given him confidence to stand up against these other two guys. He was not afraid. We got to believe that maybe he was bolstered some by his previous efforts to defend the store.
4 days after the murder, on October 2nd, Willard Grandstaff is laid to rest.
I was a pallbearer at his funeral. I walked up to his body, and I'm screaming, "No, stop, don't do this, wake up, let's go home." And I sat down and finally got myself together, and his mom said, "Robert, you need to let him go. He's at rest now. The good Lord needed him for something besides here."
Grow up. The only thing I could tell the police was just to get this son of a bitches.
In the weeks after the murder, the case is at a standstill.
We just were basically stymied in the early part of this investigation. When you have a case like this where you're basically, your investigation has really turned cold kind of quickly, you're just desperately looking for similar crimes, trends involving maybe a weapon of the same caliber, things of that nature. Unfortunately, we have a lot of convenience store robberies. Anybody that we learned about that's committing, violent armed robberies and shooting people would have been subjects of interest in this investigation. We had to look at everything.
Investigators then get a call with a promising tip.
Another agency gave us lead on some people that were committing some other burglaries in the area at the time.
Shamik and Prince. The half-brothers were on the radar because they had been in the South during that time period.
Investigators reach out to all police agencies in the area, gathering as much information about their new lead.
They definitely had violent things in their criminal histories. They're buying and selling guns, and they could have possibly been in the area. There are two people we're going to have to look at.
While investigators in the Willard Grandstaff murder wait for detailed reports on their new suspects, they re-examine forensic evidence collected at the scene to see if there is a link.
The forensic unit is pretty much looking for everything, and of course, the main things is fingerprints.
Well, when you examine the surveillance video, obviously you're interested in surfaces that may have been touched. DNA is so sophisticated now that skin cell tissue can leave what we call touch DNA.
But it's very hard when it's a public store like this. Everybody that comes in there could touch that counter.
You basically get a mixture of DNA that's unidentifiable exclusively to one person, and it's virtually impossible to isolate it.
I'm John Metters, and I was in charge of the prosecution in the murder of Willard Grandstaff. Unfortunately, there weren't forensics, there wasn't DNA, there weren't fingerprints. There may have been one partial palm print, but was not something that law enforcement could use.
With no viable forensic evidence, detectives reach back out to the agency that provided the tip.
At that point, we'd deal with investigators. We would have them take full body pictures, showing tattoos or anything, and then you start doing a comparison there to see if things match up.
Investigators' search for the suspects takes a turn when they receive a new update.
We find out at the same time as Willard was killed. The half-brothers were incarcerated in another state. Both of them were caught up north somewhere. At that point, they were eliminated because we knew they were committing crimes at other places at the time that this murder occurred.
The trail became cold, and we were desperate for a lead. We were at a dead end.
Months after Willard's murder, the investigation is at a standstill, and his family is still on edge.
After Will was murdered, I know that my parents made extra sure to lock the doors and double check before they ever went to go do anything. I think they were worried. My mom worked at the store. I wanted my mom to come home. I didn't want her to get hurt. I worried a lot that someone else was gonna die. I try not to think about that store, ever.
With little else to go on, investigators make a bold move.
The sheriff's department decides to air this footage on the news, the local news channels in Columbia, in hopes that someone may identify the suspects or even identify this truck.
When you release surveillance video or you make an appeal to the public, you'll take information from whatever source it comes.
But not everyone is excited about the release of the surveillance video.
I remember they brought the video over, but they wouldn't let me watch it because I was a child. And so to this day, I've still never seen the video.
When they showed the story on the news, I started screaming. I had to literally get up and walk away from the television. I started crying, miss him. I wish he was still here.
Days became weeks, weeks became months. During that time, law enforcement was working on it. They were getting leads, they were running down leads. They were still showing the video periodically, keeping it out with the public. But in cases like this, where you don't have a witness, what usually happens is that somebody out there, the culprits are either going to talk and mess up, or somebody gets in trouble and wants a deal to help.
In March 2006, their luck begins to change.
One of our narcotics agents had made an arrest of an individual named Chris Ellis, who had several priors involving narcotics violations, and this was going to be one that could create some serious problems for him based on his prior convictions. This individual reached out to the narcotics agent who was involved in his case, indicated to him he had significant knowledge about this murder. That was passed on to my lead detective and myself.
Investigators agree to sit down with Ellis, who is currently incarcerated at the county jail. They begin by asking about his whereabouts around the time of the murder.
Chris Ellis tells us that he's at home the next morning and that the shooter comes back to the house and gives him the gun and asks him to get rid of the gun for him. And describes to him what had gone on, which matched up with what had gone on at the Kangaroo with Willard.
He had specific details about the actual crime itself. He knew the actual caliber of the weapon involved, which is very significant.
There's one way to find out if Chris Ellis is telling the truth.
After Chris's initial statement, we polygraphed Chris.
A cold case may go back on the shelf, but there's always a possibility of pulling it back off when something new comes in. In this particular case, Chris was at one tip. That possibly changes everything.
Investigators in the Willard Grandstaff murder case are trying to determine if a prison informant named Chris Ellis is lying.
It's very commonplace for individuals who are incarcerated to try to gain some advantage by helping solve crime. But Chris Ellis failed a polygraph. And what he was lying to us about was who was the heavier set accomplice. Well, after he failed a polygraph, he came clean about the involvement of his cousin, Lamont Ellis.
According to Chris, his cousin was the accomplice to the shooter.
Chris Ellis did not want to implicate his cousin, Lamont Ellis. That was the most significant mistruth that he had initially. Once we got through that, we were able to verify what he was telling us.
What helped make him credible in my mind was that he was telling on a family member, which is not easy to do.
Investigators push for the identity of the killer.
Jaime Marrero is who Chris Ellis identified as the shooter. When we started checking into Jaime Marrero, we realized he had a violent history. He had been involved in another shooting, homicide, several years back where he was actually shot.
Things are falling into place like none of the other leads had.
Investigators compare Jaime Marrero and Lamont Ellis to the masked gunman in the surveillance video.
The video was able to show their body height, structure, and type, and it did match. It was a key piece of evidence, without question.
Jaime matches up to the smaller guy, and Lamont definitely matches up with the larger male.
The two individuals matched the physical description of the two suspects to a T.
Investigators ask Ellis about the pickup truck seen in the video.
We find out from Chris that the truck had nothing to do with the case. We never were able to identify who was in the truck, but they were in one of their relatives' car and had been driving it that night.
Now, to build a case against Marrero and Ellis, investigators zero in on a piece of potential evidence.
According to Chris Ellis, Jaime Marrero came to his house, asked him to get rid of the gun. Chris told me that he had thrown the gun in a pond in the lower part of the county in a rural area. He had some connection in that pond because of a relative living close by.
I went to the pond with law enforcement and Richland County divers. I learned ponds are some of the toughest thing to dive for because you can't see.
We searched that pond for days, but were not able to recover it.
Desperate for more evidence, investigators attempt to leverage their best asset.
When you have a crime like this with a lack of forensic evidence or ballistics, and you've got somebody that's giving you a tip that's acquainted with the suspects, a pretext phone call is an investigative technique that is often used. It's a call that we record, and we attempt to get either a confession over the phone or acknowledgement to the crime.
We set up a patch call where Chris called Jaime Marrero to see if Jaime's going to say anything incriminating.
Christopher was able to get Jaime on the phone, and Jaime basically said, why are you doing this? Why are you talking to me about this on the telephone?
If you called me and asked me about a homicide and was implicating me as saying that, tell me about what happened, I'd be telling you, I don't know, I wasn't there. And that's not what Jaime was saying.
Which, in our view, was basically an acknowledgement, which was very significant.
The content of the conversation corroborated Chris' information immediately. And that was significant to Chris's credibility.
Then, the attention shifts to a different member of the Ellis family.
Chris's girlfriend at the time was cooperative in the investigation, and she had some degree of influence on Lamont.
Of course, Lamont finds out from the others that he's being given up. Communication is made with Lamont, who then calls into the sheriff's department and offers to come in to the sheriff's department.
Lamont Ellis sits down with investigators to share insight into exactly how and why Willard died.
That night, they had gone out to a pool hall that was right behind the Kangaroo. When they left there, Jaime was talking about doing the robbery.
But according to Lamont, when Willard resisted, Marrero lost his cool.
Lamont was pretty much upset that Jaime had shot the guy, said that was not necessary.
After we got Lamont Ellis's statement and he fully corroborated Christopher's tip, that was enough for us to secure arrest warrants for Jaime Marrero.
Willard's family is pleased with investigators' progress, but they find some of the case details shocking.
The accomplice that was arrested, Lamont, my mom knew his mom and had kind of seen him grow up. So everyone was kind of surprised to hear that Lamont was involved.
In a strange coincidence, Robert Cribb believes the events of August 4th were not Willard and Lamont's first encounter.
Lamont was in Will's class. He pushed Will outside, and I said, "No, Lamont, you need to stop and leave him alone." When they told me they had caught the killers, I felt relieved. I felt Will got the peace he deserved.
Lamont Ellis is charged with assault and robbery. Jaime Marrero is charged with the murder of Willard Grandstaff. His trial is set for September 2008.
This was a murder. This was a cold-blooded murder, and he needed to be convicted of that.
On September 22, 2008, the trial for the murder of Willard Grandstaff begins. But there's a problem.
I've been doing this a long time, and I love what I do. I love doing this job. But this case was not an easy case. There just was not any evidence, no forensics, no DNA. It was a tough case for law enforcement to crack, no question about it.
Without something directly linking him to the murder, prosecutors fear Marrero will walk.
We don't stop the investigation when the arrest takes place. We obviously wanted to build as strong a case as possible.
One of the other significant parts of the investigation post-arrest were some jailhouse phone calls. One of those calls, Mr. Jaime Marrero was talking to his girlfriend, and as a result of that, law enforcement went and talked to her. She said that he had confessed to her. Law enforcement obviously was excited at that news.
Just days into the trial, the prosecution's new star witness takes the stand.
You know, some folks are just credible. They just reek with credibility. And her testimony was powerful. And I can visually remember looking at Marrero, and he was actually slipping down in his seat as she was testifying. And he felt it. And I know the jury felt it. And it was just strong, credible evidence. I'm so glad she came forward. It was a good circumstantial evidence case. With her testimony, it really took it up a notch, too.
After her testimony, Jaime's lawyer asked the judge for a break. Jaime wanted to speak to family members. And after a period of time, he made what appeared to be a very emotional decision to plead guilty to murder and attempted armed robbery.
I told the judge at the trial, these guys have deprived me of a future as well as my son. I said, the only thing I want you to do is deprive them of their future.
Lamont Ellis is sentenced to 5 years for conspiracy and 10 years for assault. Jaime Marrero is sentenced to 38 years in prison for the murder of Willard Grandstaff.
A plea to murder is a little bit unusual because murder carries a minimum of 30 in South Carolina to life. It's what we call pine box life. So securing a murder conviction, a non-parolable offense, and then getting 38 years, we felt pretty good about that.
That video, it'll always be with you. You can never forget it. I actually ride by the kangaroo every day going to my job and look over there and think about this case every day.
Willard's family remember the young man who in his final moments gave his life to protect the place that he loved.
He showed love to everybody that came in contact with him. I've always been proud of my son. Everything he's done, everything that he wanted to accomplish, but didn't have a chance to. Yeah, I've always been proud of him for wanting to be something. But one regret that I have is that he's no longer around for me to continue being the proud mother. I love you. And still wish you was here with me, but it can't be.
Still to this day gets to me. Knowing that I miss him every day, to wish he was still here to talk to me. I'll walk up to his grave and I'll say, hey, Will, I'll miss you. I wish you were still here so we could go hang out somewhere, go get something to eat somewhere or something. And I could literally feel like he's putting his arm around me, telling me, hey, buddy, how are you? I'm right here with you. And then within 2 seconds, it's gone. I guess his way of telling me, hey, I'm here. I'm glad to see you. I'm doing okay. And I'll believe that till my dying day.
A devoted mother working to carve out a new life.
She's very religious, believes in family.
She would help anyone.
Is murdered in her own home.
She had clearly been under attack when she reached for the phone.
It was devastating.
Detectives follow the evidence down a twisted path.
Who was this person?
He's giving envelopes of money to Monica.
In her mind, they were going to be married until death do them part.
After a number of suspects emerge,
they jokingly referred to themselves as the Orange Shorts Society.
He cried, but it was very fake.
Monica told me if anything ever happens to me, that he was responsible.
The killer is someone no one could have predicted.
The whole thing was just surreal.
And I'm like, oh my God, you almost got away.
Glenville, Pennsylvania. It's a small, proud community where everyone knows their neighbor by name.
It wasn't really even a town, it was rural. Good, decent people. You could just keep the doors open on warm days, sitting on the porch and just relaxing and enjoying the peace.
It's a rural area in central Pennsylvania, so it's not typical for a violent crime to occur, and if it does occur, it's an abnormality.
On a spring afternoon in 2010, that peaceful atmosphere is interrupted when dispatchers at York County Control get a mysterious call.
Someone had dialed 911.
911.
And no one was saying anything.
Hello?
The dispatcher that received the call was inquiring, hello, is anyone there? So the protocol at the time was hang up and call it back. They received a busy signal, so the phone was off the hook. They dispatched Southwestern Regional Police. A patrolman entered the residence and announced himself that he was with law enforcement. And as he made a right into the living room area, he discovered the body. There was a lot of blood around her head, as well as on the floor.
A forensics team arrives within minutes, with 2 homicide detectives following close behind.
The victim was found lying in almost like a fetal position.
They find the victim's driver's license, which identifies her as 55-year-old Monica Schmeier. Closer inspection of the body reveals she met a violent end.
She had clearly been under attack when she reached for the phone to try to call for help.
There was a telephone with the receiver off just above her body, lying there, and there was some blood on the 9 and the 1 of the telephone.
Very close to Monica's body, detectives find an important piece of evidence.
We located a small shell casing that was lying on the ground. We searched for a firearm or ammunition, a holster, anything that would lead us to believe that there would have been a gun in the house. There was none located.
The forensics team pores over the crime scene, hoping to turn up something that can help them understand the crime.
We did fingerprinting, we did photography, we searched around the house. There was nothing there to lead us to believe that it was a home invasion, and it was very mysterious to us as far as, what happened here.
Another detail suggests Monica wasn't the victim of a robbery gone wrong.
We did locate some cash in the home that were in white envelopes that were on the bookshelf. We found cash in bins that were packed up that you could visibly see as you walked around the house.
The envelopes we found were very easy to see.
Some of them would have maybe $100 in them. Some of them only had a few dollars. Each one of them had a designation on the envelope, like to the church or for a bill or something like that.
Investigators begin collecting forensic evidence for further analysis.
The evidence we collected in the home consisted of the money envelopes, the blood evidence, scrapings from the phone, from the floor, and fingerprints. A Rolodex was found. On the Rolodex, we found some close contact information.
While forensics continue their work at the scene, detectives track down Monica's family to deliver the terrible news.
Monica had 2 adult daughters, Veronica and Elsa, and they were not living at home at the time of her killing. Veronica was in Florida, and Elsa was out of the country.
Both daughters are stunned by the murder and say that their mother was known for her charity, which had only increased since their parents' divorce.
Monica Schmeier's daughters said that she would help anyone, extremely generous, volunteered her time in the community, was a devout Catholic, very involved in her church.
Monica's brother, Eric, is no less shocked when police inform him of his sister's murder.
It was April 1st, which is April Fool's Day. You know, I'm thinking is this a prank? You know, what, my sister's been killed? It was devastating. Monica was not only my sister, she was my next door neighbor.
Detectives ask Eric to tell them more about his sister, in the hope that something from her past will point them toward her killer.
We were raised in a Catholic family in northern New Jersey. We had a simple, frugal life, 5 siblings. I was the eldest and she was the 4th. She was the smartest out of all 5 of us. Monica was very studious and very determined. Even when she was a little kid, she was a bookworm. She aced everything through college, grammar school, high school. Monica studied like crazy and went to medical school. She was going to do her internship. She was starting it in New York City.
As Monica was chasing her dreams, her life took an unexpected turn.
She met John Schmeier, and they fell in love. She became pregnant, and that was a surprise to both of them.
The young couple got married in 1981 and began building a happy life together.
Monica became a mother, and she felt that she had really found her niche. And she just loved being a mother. John, he went and got his degrees, and he became an ophthalmologist and was offered a position in Hanover, Pennsylvania. They asked me to come along and be the office manager.
With John busy at work, Monica focused on motherhood and let her own career go by the wayside.
She was supposed to do her internship, then she got pregnant again. I don't know how expected that was, but she loved it. Her focus became being a mother. She was dedicated to John and her 2 daughters. A nice wooden house with 60 acres. That's what she wanted more than anything. John gave that to her.
Over the years, John's career thrived, but the couple's marriage began to suffer. In 2003, after 22 years of marriage, he asked Monica for a divorce.
She was devastated. She was so much in love with John. She's very religious, believes in family, you know, so she didn't want to agree to divorce. She got suicidal and she went into a depression. All she did was just cry, and you could see how miserable she felt. I was worried about Monica But I felt if Monica needed any help, I was right down the street.
Finally, in 2008, after 5 years of resisting, Monica agreed to sign the divorce papers. Their unusual settlement agreement helps investigators understand why Monica had envelopes of cash stashed around her house.
John was paying Monica $1,700 a month in alimony. He had also given her the family home and much of their savings because it was him who wanted that divorce, not her.
There was alimony being paid, but he did so in cash, which was weird because Monica didn't have a bank account.
Monica Schmeier did not like to use banks, didn't trust them, preferred to keep the cash in her home.
But with Monica having no other source of income, John grew wary of the arrangement.
John was pissed off that he had to pay her in cash. He was upset that he had to pay her bills for her. He paid for everything.
Could John's resentment have grown so great he wanted Monica dead? When detectives ask Eric, his answer is shocking.
Monica told me if anything ever happens to me, John is responsible because she was scared that John would do something to hurt her.
Coming up, does a grieving spouse have something to hide?
He cried, but there were no tears. It was very fake.
A surprising lead sends the case in a new direction.
What struck me most is how utterly random it was.
And the truth blindsides everyone.
It was like an aha moment for me. Why did you lie to me?
York County Police investigating the horrific murder of Monica Schmeier have reason to be suspicious of Monica's ex-husband, John.
We had information from Eric, Monica's brother, that Monica had stated that if anything ever happened to her, that John would be responsible for that.
Investigators quickly head over to John's house. When they tell him about Monica's murder, they're surprised by his behavior.
John reacted in a way that was very awkward and very unusual, something that in my years I'd never seen. Oh my God, he put his hand across his chest.
Maybe some of it was a little fake. Maybe the clutching of the heart was a little fake.
He began to cry, would probably be a stretch. There were no tears. Myself, I do believe it was very fake. He covered his face, would look up and see if we were watching him. And as he's doing this, it's like, oh my God, this is just so weird. And it's like, is he involved?
Detectives asked John to come down to the precinct to talk.
He explained to me about this weird and unusual arrangement that he had with Monica. The envelopes that we found in the home would be labeled like electric bill, water bill, mortgage, whatever, but they were used to give back to John so that John could then pay her bills. So we're looking at this from the outside, wondering what the hell's going on, that he's paying her in cash. She is now taking cash, putting it in envelopes, giving it back to John. John's then writing a check to pay her electric bill. So it was fueling that frustration and animosity in John's perspective. He's still doing everything for Monica, even though they're not married anymore. Because being a devout Catholic, Monica didn't care they were divorced. In her mind, they were still married, and they were going to be married until death do they part.
John admits that the situation bothered him, but he says he'd never resort to murder.
He agreed. It's very frustrating. It was very much a pain for him to do all this stuff, but he couldn't. Get rid of her is for lack of a better phrase.
Anxious to prove his innocence, John provides police with an alibi.
He was able to provide us with a detailed explanation as to what he had done that day, where he was, and who he was with.
John tells the detectives he was meeting with an acquaintance named Sarah Powell before the two of them joined up with a larger group at a local restaurant.
And I asked him if he has information that can verify his alibi, and he was able to provide me with a cell phone number for Sarah Powell. We wrapped up the interviews. We advised John Schmeier to stay away from the home. We may need to go back there at some point in time just to stay out of it. We had a secure scene.
The next day, detectives speak with Sarah Powell to confirm John's alibi.
She revealed to me that, yes, I was with John Schmeier yesterday. She had been with him for lunch at a restaurant where they were discussing online trading, that John experimented with that, and he enjoyed doing it, and she was looking to get involved in it to try to make some extra money.
Sarah and her fiancé knew John Schmeier from a group that met frequently at a local restaurant.
John had started meeting with a group of people at Hooters restaurant, sometimes a few times a month. They jokingly referred to themselves as the Orange Shorts Society, or OSS.
It was a place where they would go and just hang out and, drink beer and eat wings.
After their meeting, John and Sarah had met up with the larger OSS group.
When I asked her who all was there, she was able to provide information that matched John's as far as who all was present that day.
Investigators tracked down the rest of the OSS members at the meeting, and each one of them echoes John and Sarah's story. But they also share something else about John's relationship with Monica.
At these OSS meetings, John would say that he was frustrated with her and he was trying to move on with his life, but yet Monica was always there in his business.
Even though his alibi is confirmed, John appears to have a clear motive for murder, which makes him suspicious to police. So they ask him to take a lie detector test.
John submitted to a polygraph examination. John's polygraph was inconclusive, which means that we were unable to determine whether he was being truthful or not.
The test results have police mulling over a new theory.
Well, if John has an alibi, well, then maybe there's something else going on here that we need to look into. Theoretically, what if he paid somebody to kill her? We started really looking at John as far as, a murder for hire, that theory.
There was money involved, and certainly divorces can be acrimonious. He certainly was somebody they continued to look at.
Detective suspicions about John are stoked yet again when they get a troubling call from Monica's brother, Eric.
I told them that John comes to the door at about 6 o'clock in the morning. And then John went into explaining that he went to Monica's house. John was not supposed to go to the house. He was told not to go there. He went there anyway.
Now that set a bell off for us.
Detectives are eyeing John Schmeier in the murder case of his wife, Monica, after learning that he returned to the crime scene just hours after being questioned by police.
We learned from Eric, Monica's brother, that John Schmeier disregarded what we had asked him and actually went to the scene to see what had happened and gone into the house, had looked around, had walked around.
John's behavior is not only suspicious, but could have damaged the investigation.
Anything further that we wanted to do there had been jeopardized because the scene was no longer secure at that point. With John not following our request, it's another arrow in our quiver as far as, the person of interest, just another little check mark.
The day after the murder, police canvassed the neighborhood around Monica's home.
Patrol officers went out and spoke with neighbors, were able to locate people that saw something suspicious that was out of the ordinary the afternoon of March 31st. The first witness Patrol located was Mr. Kegerice. He lives up the hill from Monica Schmeier. Mr. Kegerice advised that the afternoon of March 31st, he noticed a gentleman coming down the hill. And he said it was kind of unusual. He'd never seen the guy before that afternoon. He sees this same gentleman now walking with a purpose, is how he describes it, back up the hill with what he believes to be a white envelope in his hand. So now we're putting 2 to 2 together. Oh, white envelope. We had white envelopes in the house. Those white envelopes contain cash. Why is this guy in the middle of nowhere, then comes back, and now he has an envelope, and he's walking with a purpose? Patrol also located a second witness, Mr. Crawford, who lived a little further up the hill. And Mr. Crawford was able to tell us that he was coming up the road from the Schmeier residence, and he noticed a gentleman walking up the roadway, which was unusual because there's not a lot of foot traffic out where these guys live. And Mr. Crawford also said you can see up the hill a silver van. And he describes it as a work van. It's not a soccer mom van, it's just your regular panel work van. Patrol was able to locate some tire tracks in the grass where that van, you could see where it did like a 3-point turn, turned around and went back up the hill. So now we have a direction of travel.
Investigators conclude the van headed towards a village called Jefferson.
In Jefferson, there's a bank. Now that bank has a camera that's facing out. So what we figured was, well, we'll get a search warrant, we'll grab the bank video, as well as an ATM for March 31st. If the suspect had made a left, he goes towards Jefferson. If he makes a right, he goes to Maryland. We have a 50-50 shot, whether or not we got this van.
Investigators keep their fingers crossed as they comb through the poor quality video.
And I looked through all this video looking for silver vans, and I was able to find numerous silver vans that were coming through and going back on that day. We were looking for a needle in a haystack. We had a van. We now had, a possible suspect. We had the white envelopes. We had, all this information, but yet we still were getting nowhere.
3 days after the murder, investigators get the autopsy report, which they hope can help shed some light on the circumstances of Monica's death.
Miss Schmeier had been murdered with a single gunshot wound to the head, right above her eye. What also was found was she had a lot of trauma to the right side of her face and her cheek and lips area, indicating that there had been a struggle.
I told them that Monica would fight. Monica had no fear. She had no fear of death. Monica did not care. She would go after the guy and scratched him. When I told the police that, they checked for DNA under their fingernails.
The fingernail scrapings, we sent them off to a forensic lab for analysis for DNA.
While they wait for the results, detectives focus on anyone Monica would have trusted to come to the house.
We had information from Eric, Monica's brother, that Monica had a handyman that would take care of things for her.
He lived a pretty good distance from her house. He would come down and did a lot of work for her, trimming trees and stuff. He did come often, and he didn't charge her for anything. That did seem suspicious to us at the time, and we kind of thought there might have been a relationship there.
Now, this handyman was married, but yet he spent a lot of time with Monica. As an investigator, you look at who normally kills you. It's someone you know, someone you have a relationship with. There's a thin line between love and hate, and that's where, our suspicions were, okay, well then maybe there's something else going on here that we need to look into.
Detectives investigating the homicide of 55-year-old Monica Schmeier have learned that Monica may have had a relationship with a handyman who did work for her around the house.
He would cut her grass, would do odd jobs around the house, take care of things for her. And she would often be seen like having lunch with him, or there was a relationship there. Now, we didn't know how strong that relationship or how intimate that relationship was.
Monica's brother, Eric, can offer investigators little insight into his sister's recent personal life.
In the beginning, we visited often, and then John left. Even though she was my next-door neighbor, she became isolated from me, and in a way, I didn't know what was going on.
Detectives asked the handyman to come down to the station for an interview.
When we asked him where he was at the time of the murder, he told the investigator that he had been working at a residence within a gated community in Adams County, about 40 miles away.
Unwilling to take him at his word, detectives check into his alibi.
We were able to substantiate that based off of the gate log as well as the video that was there that showed him coming in early in the morning and leaving after the 911 call would have been placed. So we were able to eliminate him as a possible person of interest in this investigation.
With the handyman in the clear, detectives are running out of possible suspects.
We looked at everyone. We looked at the UPS driver who delivered a package that day. We looked at the mailman. We looked at the exterminator. We looked at people that she knew from the dry cleaners. Anywhere we could find information about Mrs. Schmeier, we talked to those people because we were at wit's end as far as who could have done this and why would they have done it.
The passing weeks start to take an emotional toll on Monica's friends and family.
Everybody back home is waiting for something to happen, something. And then I got to the point, and I think the rest of the family, it's just gonna be one of those things. You know, we're just gonna, you know, the guy maybe gets away with it or whatever.
Just seemed as if they were never going to solve it. And I think people were concerned, what if it was random? Because if it was random, it can happen again.
A month into the investigation, Detective Damagon decides to take a fresh look at all the evidence they have so far.
I was sitting at my desk in my office, and I have my notepad, and I'm going through all my notes from the scene.
The investigators circle back to Monica's ex, John, and his friends at the Orange Short Society.
I'm flipping through my notebook, and I get to my interview with Sarah Powell. Reading that, going back through that.
Fellow Orange Short Society member Sarah Powell had confirmed John's alibi. But now another detail suddenly jumps out to the detective.
And immediately, you know, a light bulb goes off, and I recall, you know, Sarah Powell telling me, my fiance is usually there, but he wasn't yesterday.
Sarah's fiance, Timothy Jacoby, is also a member of the Orange Short Society. But because he was unable to confirm John's alibi on the day of the murder, he had been off investigators' radar until now.
Come to find out, he has a master's degree, he's college educated, he's a U.S. Air Force veteran. He made, you know, better than average money.
But when police search Timothy's name in their database, they make an alarming discovery.
He had a prior arrest for a robbery of a jewelry store involving a firearm.
Scooped up, I think it was close to $48,000 worth of jewelry. Turned around and ran out and dropped all the loot as he was running. They still caught him. He served prison time for that.
An ex-con who's friends with John Schmeier. The discovery reignites detectives' murder-for-hire theory.
We're lacking the nexus between Tim and Monica, and that's where the investigation kinda pivots to John Schmeier again.
Clearly he didn't do it himself, but he could have paid someone to do it.
Detective suspicions intensify when they check John's phone records.
In John's cell phone records, we found a phone call the day of the murder from John to Tim Jacoby. And I'm like, oh my God. It was like an aha moment for me. So all this is beginning to fit together. We had information from Eric, Monica's brother, that Monica had stated at some point in time that if anything ever happens to me, John did. So we were looking, did John Schmeier and Tim Jacoby conspire to kill Monica Schmeier?
When police discover that John Schmeier's friend, Timothy Jacoby, is a convicted felon, they wonder if Schmeier may have commissioned him to murder his wife, Monica.
I run him for firearms, and what does he own? A Kel-Tec 32 automatic, which is one of the manufacturers we're looking for. So again, another flag goes up. You know, now we got to tie him to a van.
Was Jacoby the man witnesses saw driving the silver van close to Monica's house around the time of the murder?
But the problem we're seeing now is he doesn't own a van. We then identified where he worked, and he has access to a silver work van that they sign out on a calendar. You just go in and you check the calendar. If it's available, you put your initials in there, and on Tuesday you get the van.
Investigators asked for the company's logbook to see if Timothy had the van when Monica was killed.
We're going through it, and wouldn't you know it, there's only 11 months there. And the 1 month is missing is March. March 31st is the date of the murder. Once we found that Tim Jacoby had access to a van, we checked that bank surveillance video, and we were able to locate a van that's the same make, model as the one that Tim Jacoby had access to, coming out a route that would lead someone towards Tim's home.
The evidence piling up against Jacoby is compelling, but detectives will need something more concrete if they're to file charges.
We make the decision, we're gonna hit Tim's house with a search warrant. Tim did not say one word. Not why are you guys here, what's going on, nothing. Silence, other than a smirk on his face.
The search quickly uncovers damning evidence.
We found a firearm that had been stolen in a burglary in Florida some years before. So Tim, being a felon, he was not to possess any kind of firearm, and he was currently on parole, so we charged him with possession of a firearm as well as receiving stolen property. His parole was violated, and he was put in jail.
In addition to the stolen gun, investigators find a strange piece of evidence that leaves them scratching their heads.
In a detached shed that was on the property, we found a small barrel about, I don't know, that long, maybe 2.5 inches long. And it appeared to me that it was consistent with a .32 or a small caliber firearm barrel.
Could this barrel be part of the murder weapon? While it's sent to the lab for analysis, detectives have some questions for Jacoby. But Jacoby isn't interested in talking.
Tim invoked his right to counsel, advised that he didn't have anything to say, and that he wanted his attorney present.
While Jacoby stonewalls, detectives question his fiancée.
When we interviewed Sarah, Sarah denied any involvement to the point where she was physically upset. I then further inquired with Sarah if she'd ever seen this small black firearm that would fit in like the palm of my hand, a .32 ACP firearm to match the shell casing we found at the scene. And she said yes, that she had been with Tim when he had shot it. And she advised that it was at Tim's parents' place on a covered porch that's behind their farm, and they would shoot up towards a field.
Police quickly file a search warrant and begin scouring Tim's parents' property, starting with the house.
We found the box for a .32 ACP firearm, but we didn't find the gun. I went out back looking in the grass, trying to find, a shell casing, something that's going to help us. We didn't find anything.
To connect Tim to Monica's murder, detectives need to find the gun or the shell casings that match the ones found at the crime scene.
At that point, I'm standing on the decking of this porch, and I look down. The boards are spaced in a way that they're, I don't know, maybe a ½ inch to 3/4 of an inch apart. A light bulb goes off. I look at these two guys and said, did anybody go underneath? And they said, no, I don't think so. And I'll never forget, I'm standing there. They weren't underneath the platform for, 30 seconds. And the one officer says, are you looking for a .32? And I said, man, don't screw with me like that. And he goes, here you go. And he holds one out from underneath the porch. He goes, oh, here's another one. Here's another one. Here's another one. The shell casings we found at the Jacoby farm were matched up with the shell casing from the murder scene. The gun that fired the shot that killed Monica Schmeier is the same gun that fired those rounds that we found at the farm.
But before detectives could bring murder charges against him, one question was crucial to their case. Why would Tim Jacoby kill Monica Schmeier?
Police determined that he had never met Monica, had nothing against Monica, and the only way he knew her was through her husband.
To detectives, it was looking more and more like Tim didn't act alone.
John's alibi was airtight in the sense that he could not have physically committed that crime. However, that didn't clear him with police, because certainly he could have hired Tim Jacoby.
Anxious to get the truth once and for all, detectives confront the man they've suspected all along.
I went down to Virginia, where Dr. Schmeier was now residing, because we were not 100% sure that John didn't have anything to do with the homicide.
Police have strong evidence implicating Tim Jacoby in the murder of Monica Schmeier. But they suspect that Monica's ex-husband, John, may have ordered the hit.
We've identified Tim Jacoby as a suspect, but now we need a motive. Well, how does Tim Jacoby know Monica Schmeier? Because he doesn't know her, but he knows John. Did John Schmeier and Tim Jacoby conspire to kill Monica Schmeier?
John and Tim would socialize together. According to John, that's where Tim learned about Monica and the envelopes of money.
When we questioned him further, he said Tim knew that Monica would have cash at the house because that's what John told everyone. He knew that Monica lived by herself because that's what John told everyone. Tim Jacoby took that information and he devised in his mind the perfect crime.
It's a plausible motive. Still, to test the theory that John may have paid Tim to carry out the murder, detectives searched the financial records of both men.
We're trying to find any kind of financial connection between John and Tim. We left no stone unturned. We were finding nothing.
Yet detectives know that John had placed a call to Jacoby on the day of the murder.
When we inquired with John about why this phone call had been made, he related that, well, he had called Tim to let him know that he was meeting with Sarah because he didn't want Tim to think there was some kind of relationship between them or that John was trying to formulate a relationship with Sarah.
Without any evidence to implicate John in his wife's murder, detectives finally clear him as a suspect.
I believe that John, as quirky as he may be, had nothing to do with the homicide of Monica Schmeier. no one other than Tim Jacoby committed this crime.
On October 9th, 2012, Timothy Jacoby is charged with first-degree murder.
Someone she had never met that John knew, the whole thing was just surreal.
2 years later, the case goes to trial, and prosecutors lay out how they believe Monica's murder unfolded.
We believe that afternoon, Tim signed out the van in Lancaster County. He came across, parked the van, walked up to the home, whether he knocked on the door or he rushed the house, whatever, he overtook Monica, whether it was by surprise or by force. At some point, she made a run for the phone, at which point she brought the phone up to make the call, and she was shot.
Worried police are on their way, Jacoby panics.
Tim, in haste, grabs what he sees on the counter, walking with a purpose, with an envelope in his hand, and leaves.
Jacoby tries to cover his tracks by tampering with the logbook and murder weapon.
It showed that Jacoby was trying to erase every bit of evidence that might tie him to this crime.
So far, the evidence is circumstantial. So prosecutors turn to the results of a specialist YSTR DNA test.
A YSTR tests for specifically the male Y chromosome. They ran the YSTR test on the fingernail scrapings of Monica Schmeier, and they found a complete Y profile of the male Jacoby lineage. We eliminated his brothers and his father as having anything to do with it based off of alibis, other circumstantial evidence.
On October 8th, 2014, the jury finds Jacoby guilty of first-degree murder, burglary, tampering with physical evidence, and robbery.
Ultimately, Tim was sentenced to death. That's justice in my eyes.
Maybe there was a sense of relief and closure with the family, but for me,